After teaching piano for over a decade, there are 3 hidden mistakes almost every beginner makes that don't just slow you down, they actually make you worse over time. Learning piano is like a combination lock. Get even one of these wrong or do them in the wrong order, and you're gonna end up with hands together issues, sloppy choppy playing, and long-term memory issues. And here's the scary part. Most beginners are completely unaware the third one even exists. But once you unlock all 3 in the right order, learning piano starts to feel natural, and you'll actually see yourself get better every single day. Let's get started. All right, so first up, we got the staircase method. Now, this isn't as exciting as part 2 and 3, but this is the fundamental, so it's critical to understand this before we move on. So the concept is you're right here, and your song, your goal is way up here. So in order to reach your goal, you have to build a practice staircase. Now, if each of these steps is very small, it's very easy to just run up to your goal. But instead, most beginners get right here, and I'll show you exactly where this is in your practicing, and then they unintentionally create a giant step right here. And so you get here and you get stuck because you can't jump over this giant staircase. This is what leads to hands coordination issues. This is what leads to sloppy, choppy playing. And long term, this is going to lead to a lot of memory issues. So we don't want to learn this way. So let's say we're learning clock by Coldplay. To build our staircase, there's actually only 4 variables that we have control over, and I call these the 4 S's. And the order you learn these S's in is extremely important. So first variable, we can choose to practice hands separate or we can practice hands together. Second, we can choose the section length, so we can take a small section, a medium section, or a large section. Third, we can change the speed from slow to medium to fast. And number 4 is the important one, and this is the one that almost every beginner forgets. And we'll talk about this one in a bit. All right, to start learning the song, we want to start with the smallest step possible. So of course that's going to mean hands separate, a small section, so maybe just 1 measure, and start at a slow tempo. And so we practice measure 1 until it's good, and then we just repeat the same thing for all these other measures, slow tempo for all of them. And of course we do the same thing with the right hand as well. So now we've built our staircase to about here, and this is the point that almost every beginner messes up. So let me ask you this. We now have 3 options to increase the difficulty. Option A, we can put hands together. Option B, we can keep hands separate, but we can increase the section length. Or option C, we can change the speed from slow to medium for all these sections. Think about it for a second. Which one is the correct answer? So a lot of students make the mistake of trying to play hands together. And so they take a section hands together, but the problem is you've just doubled the notes you play and you have to get the hands together coordination. So this is going to be a very big step, and you're not going to be able to get over this big step. Option 2, we can increase the section length, so we can do a bigger section. But again, we're still doubling the notes, so that's still going to lead to a giant step here, and this is not ideal. But option 3 is actually a lot easier, because when we change from slow to medium speed, we can gradually increase a little faster, a little faster, a little faster until we hit this medium speed. And so this is the correct answer on what to do next, and we want to get all these sections from slow to medium speed. All right, so once you have these medium speed, now we're going to increase the section length. But it seems like we're going to run into the same problem as before, right? Because if I double the section length, I'm going to have double the notes, so this is going to be much harder. But there's a little trick to get around this. What you want to do is you want to double the section length, but now we're going to go from medium back to slow. So it's like, yeah, we doubled the notes, but we also made it easier because we went to a slow tempo. So that allows us to build a very small step here. So it's kind of like 2 steps forward, 1 steps back to make it nice and easy for ourselves. Then you simply repeat for the rest of the sections, getting bigger sections at a slow tempo. And so now all we do is repeat this process again. So again, we don't want to take a big section right away. We want to first work all these sections to medium speed. And then what can we do? Well, we can take a big section, but of course we just doubled the notes, so we want to go back to a slow tempo. Same thing for the right hand. We can learn this section at a slow tempo. All right, so now we've built to like here, and here's another point beginners get wrong. Now you might think the next logical step is, okay, Zach, let's try to get hands together now, but maybe a short section, maybe slow. And this is a huge mistake. This is why students run into hands together issues, because before we put hands together, we always want to do the 4th S. Now, to explain the fourth S, I need to explain the science of how learning piano works. So what happens is when you see these notes on the page, it sends a signal to your brain. Now, your brain has these nerve cells. They're called dendrites. They're brain cells. They're long and spindly. And it literally sends an electrical signal, just like lightning, through your brain. And that sends down your spinal cord into your hands, and finally you play the note. Now, every time you send this signal to your brain wants to speed up this signal to play faster. So it actually coats your brain cell in something called myelin. And myelin is a conductor. And a conductor means it will make the electrical signal travel faster through your brain. And so the more times you give your brain this signal, the more myelin it puts on the brain cell, and the faster and faster this signal will travel, until you can get it fast enough where you can play the song in real speed. But here's the big problem. Let's say you're practicing one day and you start practicing sloppy, and instead of this note, you're hitting the wrong note right here. Well, your brain doesn't actually know what the right note is. It just knows the signal that you're sending to it. So what your brain will do is it'll actually send this signal down the wrong brain cell, and it'll cause you to play the wrong note. And the more and more time you send a sloppy signal to your brain, the more myelin it's going to build on the wrong brain pathway, which makes it more likely you're going to repeat the same wrong note in the future, even during a performance. That's why people say practice doesn't make perfect, practice makes permanent. So you want to think about it like this. Every time you practice sloppy, you're actually getting worse at piano. You're getting further and further away from your goal. But here's where this gets even worse for beginners. There's a scientific concept called the serial position effect. And it sounds complicated, but it's pretty simple. Basically, your brain remembers the beginning and the end a lot easier than it remembers the middle. So for example, you probably remember your first kiss, and you probably remember your last kiss, but you probably don't remember your 17th kiss, right? And guess what? Piano works the same way. So when you start your practice session, the beginning and the end, your brain will remember much more than the middle. But watch how every beginner messes this up. So what most people do is they get their new song, they're excited to play, and they start playing it really fast, and they play it sloppy, because they haven't learned the song yet. And then as they practice more and more, they start to practice good. They start to get accuracy, and they get the notes in the right place. But then what does everybody do at the end? Everybody thinks, oh, I worked hard, I need a reward. Let me see how fast I can play this song. And so at the end, they do another sloppy repetition of their practice. And so guess what your brain remembers? It remembers the beginning, the sloppy playing. It remembers the end, the sloppy playing. And it doesn't remember the good playing in between. And so you wake up the next morning and your song is still sloppy. And you think, what happened? And then you repeat the same cycle over. And then you wake up the next morning and again it's sloppy. And you're literally sending more and more bad signals to your brain and building more and more bad myelin. And so what I always do at the end of the practice session, make sure you get 3 or 4 perfect reps, no matter how slow you have to practice, to make sure your brain is going to remember the good stuff. Now, there's one important thing I actually didn't teach you about myelin, and that's that myelin mainly gets applied when you sleep. So what actually happens is during the day, you get a bunch of signals, and then when you fall asleep, your brain says, hey, what's important that I need to remember and what's not important, and I don't have to waste my memory on it. So in this case, your brain says, hey, I got all of these signals. Since I got so many signals, this must be important. And then when you sleep, it coats a whole bunch of myelin on your brain cell at one time. And that's why oftentimes you'll be struggling with the piece, but then you fall asleep and you wake up the next morning and almost instantly it clicks because your brain consolidated all this myelin while you were sleeping. And so before you put hands together, you always want to do the fourth S, which is to sleep on it. Even if your right hand is just a little bit sloppy and your left hand is just a little bit sloppy, when you put them hands together, it's going to compound the sloppiness and it's going to be all out of sync. And that's what most beginners struggle with, and they end up moving the wrong way down the staircase. And that's why the big rule is never practice hands together on day one. Always practice hands separate, let them solidify in your sleep, and then when they're nice and solid the next day, then you can put hands together. And just like always, when we do put our hands together, we want to start with a small section again, and we want to start with a slow speed. And then we do it just the same as before. We want to work each section up at a slow speed, and then we increase the speed next, and then you do a bigger section working back to a slow speed, and then get those big sections to medium. And then finally, you'll have the whole thing at a slow tempo and then just work from medium to fast. And this will get you all the way up your staircase. All right, so I know that's a lot to remember. So before we go on to step 2 and actually sit down at the piano, and this is the fun part, I made a cheat sheet that shows you exactly what steps to follow so you know the correct order to progress through these steps. And I'll put the link to that up here or in the description. All right, so now we got the fundamentals down pat, and this is the fun part, the iceberg strategies, which are accelerated learning techniques. Basically, teachers found that instead of just using pure repetition, there are different ways of practicing that supercharge how much myelin your brain will produce. And we're going to start with the added note method. This is by far the best one to learn for beginners. All right, so let's say you're practicing Coldplay clocks for the first time. So of course we take hands separate, so just the right hand. We take a small section, so just the first measure, and we're going to practice it slow. Now this might seem easy, but to a beginner, this might actually be pretty challenging. And on top of that, we want to drill this in rock solid so we don't have trouble getting hands together later. All you're going to do is you're going to take the first 2 notes and repeat it 4 times, right? So 1, 2, 3, 4. And now we're just going to add 1 note, right? The added note strategy. So we take the first 3 notes, repeat it 4 times. Then we take the first 4 notes, right? We add 1 note. Repeat it 4 times. Then the first 5 notes. Repeat 4 times, then 6, 7, 8, until you have the whole measure learned. Now you might think that this is easy, but here's where every beginner messes up. Remember, as we're playing these notes, the key isn't playing the notes. The key is sending the signal to our brain. And the stronger signal we can send, the more myelin our brain is going to build when we sleep. So there's 2 ways to increase the myelin production. Number 1, when we play strong, we send a strong signal to the brain. So I see a lot of beginners play very weak and soft. This is going to send a weak and soft message to our brain. So instead, we want to play strong every time we play. Now notice I didn't say loud, because whenever I say loud, I see beginners try to smack the notes and you're going to hurt yourself, right? So instead, we want to play strong, and it will be loud. We want to focus on the strength. And the second part is we want to play intentionally, right? A lot of beginners, I'll show them this method and they'll just start doing this and start playing it sloppy. We want to play intentionally. So you want to think like you're in the army and you're marching and you're going march, march. All right, that's good. March, march. And you're sending super strong signals to your brain. Hey, these are the correct notes. Put myelin here. All right, so the added note method is great when you're first learning a new section. Now let me show you one more, the rhythmic variation. This one is very powerful for speeding up from slow to fast when you have running 8th notes or 16th notes like we have in this song. All right, so all we're going to do is play these same notes using 4 different rhythms. The first rhythm is long, short, sounds like this. Long, short, long, short, long, short, long, short. And you repeat that 4 times. Second rhythm is the opposite. It's short, long, sounds like this. Short, long, short, long, short, long, short, long. Again, playing with strength and intentionality. Rhythm number 3 gets a little bit trickier, but it's not too hard. It's long, short, long, short, sounds like this. Long, short, long, short, repeat 4 times. And then the last rhythm is short, long, short, long. Goes like this. Short, long, short, long. And what this does is it kind of hits your brain from a bunch of different angles and it just locks it into your muscle memory. And I'll have the instructions for these on the cheat sheet as well. Now, these are just 2 of the many techniques we can use to build myelin faster. And I'll tell you where to get the rest in a second, but first, we need to talk about the third concept. And this one is important because even if you do the first 2 steps completely right, it won't matter if you don't understand the zone of proximal development. So in psychology, there are 3 different learning zones. So this big green zone right here, this is stuff that you already know, so it's very easy for you. And so practicing in the green zone isn't going to do anything because it's not challenging you, right? You're just playing stuff that you already know how to play. And this red zone is things that are very hard for you. And if you spend time way out here, it's not going to work because it's too hard, and it's the equivalent from lifting 100 pounds trying to lift 500 pounds the next day. It's simply not going to work. But there's this third very thin zone right here. And this is the zone of proximal development. This is like, 3 little bears. It's not too hard. It's not too easy. It's just right. So it's easy enough so it's still doable, but it's still hard enough that it still challenges you. And this zone is where all the actual learning happens. But the truth is, most beginners spend 95% of their time sticking in the easy zone or sticking in the way too hard zone, and a very small percentage of their time actually sticking in the just right zone where the learning actually happens. And I call these people endless beginners, where they just hop around from video to video to video to song to song to song, not realizing that most of the songs are too hard, some of them are too easy, and very rarely do they stumble upon one that's actually just right. Now, this is a very difficult problem to fix because you have to know what songs to learn at what time to stay right in this yellow zone. And what makes it even harder is certain songs have parts that are very easy and other parts that are very difficult. So for example, the chorus might be very easy and the verses might be very difficult. This is called sequencing. And sequencing is a very difficult problem to solve. And so after teaching piano for over a decade and sifting through hundreds and hundreds of songs and exercises and sections, I developed a sequence of songs and exercises to keep you right in this yellow zone all the time. And I put it all together in a free Piano Superhuman course that'll get you started on the right track and building your foundation correctly. And it'll also teach you more of these iceberg techniques to build myelin faster. And I'll have the link to that here or in the description. Now, I do want to be fully transparent with you, so the free course will get you started on the right track with the correct fundamentals. But if you want the full start to finish course, there is an optional premium course called Super Simple Piano that takes you from complete beginner all the way to advanced level. And I have hundreds of student testimonials where you can actually see the results of the students who have already taken the course. And so if you like this super detailed, in-depth style of teaching, it's there for you whenever you're ready. But either way, I'd sign up for the free course now. That way you can make sure you get off started on the right foot and get those fundamentals locked in. So click the link here in the description and I'll see you there.